you go on the couch or wherever and just crash?
I go to the beach and go into convulsions. That's what happened. That's what happened. I'll tell you a quick story. I left the Orioles, right? We got a mutual, like, all right, I'm going to pay your last year of your deal. So I have a 3-year deal. I stay for 2. They work out a deal like, hey, listen, we're going to bring in Andy McPhail. You have no real role here. What, like, well, I'm not walking away from my contract. They're like, okay, we'll guarantee your contract for the final year. I'm like, okay, I'm out. I went to the beach the next day and laid down on the beach for the first time, I think, in probably a couple of years. And I tried to relax, and my body went into these, like, just convulsions. I couldn't, like, I thought something was wrong with me. I couldn't relax, So, yeah, that's what happens to me at the end of the year in baseball.
Before we get started on the show, okay, officially, do you miss it, or do you like just being on the media now? Do you miss being in the front office and being a GM?
So I was just talking to Steve Gelbs, covers the Mets for SNY, and he does sometimes play-by-play, and he does a great job sideline. He and I did the studio shows for SNY this weekend, and so I'm talking to him just about this topic. He goes, wow. He goes, David Stern's doing all this stuff. I'm like, man, I love being on this side of things and not having to be second guessed every single time from every single person that's out there that thinks they know baseball better than you as the judge. Like, you knew your team better than anybody in the city, better than anybody, and you're never going to make every decision that's correct, right? That's the way baseball is. But I don't miss that part. I don't miss talking to unrealistic owners who really don't have, even though they put all this money into their business, they don't have any idea too, but they think they do. And it was so frustrating for me, and I didn't handle it very well anyway. So I don't miss that part at all. Do I miss the interactions with my friends and people and the adrenaline behind the scenes? Yes. But that's probably it.
Well, let's get started. Let's officially get the Monday edition here of Welcome to the GM podcast with Jim Duquette, former GM of the Orioles and Mets here on pucksports.com. Current host, MLB Network Radio, Sirius XM. Monday visit brought to you by Flat Stick Pub. Perfect spot for a date night, guys night, ladies night, or large group event. Visit one of their 6 great locations across the Northwest at flatstickpub.com. Jim joins us every single Monday. New episodes dropping at 1 o'clock on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. We are in the Puck Sports Studios, built by Limbach Lumber. Let's first start, before we look the week that was in Major League Baseball, let's start with, how about that? How about our Mariners taking it to your Mets? Wow. How are the New York Mets fans reacting to being swept by the lonely Seattle Mariners? Huh?
They were eating Cheerios on Monday morning, and they were crying in their milk. It was not a good weekend. And, they had a road trip from hell. I don't think I've ever remembered a road trip quite like this. It was 10 games in 4 different cities. Started in Anaheim for 3. Then they had to go to St. Louis for 1 game that had been rained out, had to be replayed. Then So they barely spent. They didn't even spend 24 hours in St. Louis. Had to jump on a plane, go to Colorado, play the Rockies for 3, and then jump on a plane, go to Seattle for 3. Got in this morning in New York at like 7 a.m. I mean, literally, as I was waking up this morning, I think they were landing at JFK Airport. So, they did measured the miles. It was like over 8,000 miles by the time they actually land in New York this morning. And they were, there was an absolute beatdown. And in some ways they were flat. Some ways they were, just slapped around. It's never one or the other, right? It's never, the Mariners were so great. This is a World Series caliber team. It's not the Mets are this horrible, horrible team. A lot of times it's, who you play and when you're playing them and how you are playing at that moment. But you have to give the Mariners a ton of credit because that's about as complete of a series that they played all season. I mean, you've seen them every single day. I've never seen this kind of defense that they've had over a series, right? So the offense was good. The pitching was fantastic, but the defense, if you look at the metrics on the defense, they're not kind to this team. But I cannot believe the plays, whether it was Polanco, Robles, play after play after play, that you're going, wow, this is one of those where they just showed what they're capable of doing. And that's the good news. It's also the bad news, because they haven't played up to that caliber yet.
Yeah, that was the best defensively they have played probably all season long. And then they authored, probably the best defensive play that they've had with the Polanco. You talked about a double play with Rivas. I mean, that was just sensational. I mean, just all the way around. Polanco stop, Rivas catching it with his bare hand, toe tapping second base and throwing to first. And yeah, you've had Robles catch in the outfield. I think did a Rosarina have another catch in there?
Rosarina did, yeah. I don't know how they didn't collide. Like, it was one of those, like, what? That was dangerous, but Rosarina made the play. How about Polanco last night? Diving to his backhand.
Yeah.
2 nights later, after the 4-6-3, he made a barehanded play. He almost went by it. The thing was spinning. He grabs it, barehands it. I mean, he looked like an incredible Gold Glove caliber second baseman this weekend.
What if any message maybe was sent to the rest of baseball about how good the Mariners can be? Because they did, the Sunday game, they hammered them on national TV when it's the only thing that's going on. It's the standalone game. Yep. They have that type of performance. And I think people around baseball know how good they are. Like, they're pitching. But again, that offensive explosion, no one even in Seattle has seen that. Do you think around the rest of baseball message was sent about how good this team can be?
Yeah, I think so. I think especially in the light, like you mentioned, all right, they scored 12 runs. That was a season high. You look at, what they've been doing, you can look at averages, and their average is up, runs per game here during this stretch. That's, always, you have to be cautious there, because, there could be 2 or 3 really good games, that push that average up uncharacteristically. But this is definitely a deeper lineup. And, it was nice to see. I mean, we know Julio didn't do anything. He struck out 5 times. That's almost unheard of. But, when you see what he's going to do once he's in this lineup, hopefully, healthy, full-time, everything else. And so when you see him in there, and then you see what Polanco's doing and Big Dumper, people in New York want to know, why is he called Big Dumper? Well, because he's got a big dumper. Anyway, there's nothing too tricky about that nickname. Yeah. But I mean, his power potential, which I know we talked about plenty. Just Rosarena, what he's capable of doing, like, it just has a length to the lineup that we haven't seen, and that's where you're like, well, how could this team be giving up the least amount of runs and scoring the least amount of runs in this, basically, no, I don't think there's a team that's done that ever, if I'm not mistaken. So like, how could this be? But, it's a different team in the last 2 weeks for sure.
And we've talked about this many times on the show. It just goes to show you that, they don't need to score 12 runs.
Right.
With this starting staff that gave up 1 earned run in 19 innings pitched against the Mets this past weekend. They just need a little bit, and if they just get a little bit, I mean, I don't think there's just not another team in baseball that can match them with that rotation. You think about what they would do, Jim, if they got in to the postseason. If they got into the postseason, they would literally not even use Bryce Miller as a starter if they got in the playoffs.
It's incredible.
I mean,
Bryce Miller was unbelievable Friday night, right? Yeah. I mean, Bryce Friday night, like, he's the forgotten pitcher on this rotation who's really, really good, and showed that on Friday night. But what is his role moving forward, right? Like, you could put him into the bullpen, and he might be able to give you, some length, kind of a, piggyback situation if one of their starters goes short. Like, he can be a huge weapon for you, if needed. So
it's a good problem to have with Miller and Wu, to use those guys out of the bullpen. I was talking to Bill Kruger about this, and I thought Bill made a great point about how you look back in the Houston World Series against the Dodgers and how Hinch used like Charlie Morton and these other guys out of the bullpen who were starters, and that it really just it sprung them to win that World Series because you're using these talented pitchers out of your bullpen, right? And it's just such an added weapon to have those two guys that you're going to be able, as I know I'm looking way ahead, that you're going to be able to use out of the bullpen if you're in the playoffs.
Yeah, and A.J. Hinch did it with the Astros. Alex Cora did it with the Red Sox. He used Chris Sale out of the pen. He used Nathan Eovaldi against the Dodgers. That World Series. So it started becoming a thing. With when the Astros did it and the Red Sox, the Nationals did it. When they won, Patrick Corbin pitched out of the bullpen a couple different times. It is a real thing in the postseason when you have those starters coming out, and sometimes you end up using even your best starters if it's to help you win a series. Like the Dodgers did it with Scherzer. So it's happened plenty, and I think that's the other issue or exciting thing about this for the Mariners. Again, just get in there and let your pitching handle it, because those games are tight most of the time. The pitching overall is something that rules the day. I mean, you have to have some kind of offensive threat, but the pitching is it's four starters, four relievers, and you can get through 3 rounds of playoffs.
You think Julio, if they're playing at 1:00 and it's not on Sunday Night Baseball, do you think Julio is getting back for that game? Or how much did that play into it that it was on Sunday Night Baseball?
I do think that there's something too. I mean, you haven't been on Sunday Night Baseball in 20 years? Over 20 years?
In Seattle,
In Seattle, right? In Seattle, that's a big deal. All right, this guy's coming to town, and the exposure was. It was a great day. Well, beautiful. I mean, that park is beautiful anyway, but just showcases so well. And so I think Julio's like, hey, I'm playing in this game. Get me in there, and maybe it's likely he wasn't ready. It kind of goes to some of this where he didn't go on a rehab assignment, I don't believe, and that kind of you're seeing more and more players not do that. I don't like it. I think it does a disservice to the player. They think they can simulate high-end velocity better in a controlled environment around the team. I haven't seen enough indications that that's the case. Because it doesn't, for me, it does. The timing for hitting is so important. And even if it's against AAA pitching, you have to, you don't care about any of the results in AAA, but, this is how they're doing it in the sport these days. And, Julio ends up going, he ends up wearing it 0 for 5, but the presence was felt. I mean, he there's no question that, the first couple of at-bats, Mets pitchers, they know who he is, and they're careful pitching to him.
Justin Verlander made his first rehab start over the weekend for Houston. They'll add him here soon. They've won 5 straight. They're coming off as they start this week now. I think a series against Tampa Bay. They start having swept the Red Sox. I mean, what does Seattle need to do? And this is a stupid question because they just need to keep winning.
Yeah,
need to do to keep them at bay. They currently are I think a percentage point behind them there in the West. This is going to be a hell of a run in a competition between these two. You're probably going to go down to the very last day of the season.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it. I think when you look at, I tend to look at it in the segments of the season. Okay, they just finished a homestand. However they got there, it doesn't matter. You would have liked to have won 2 of 3 over Detroit, because now you'd be sitting there, with a 7-2 homestand going on the road. But still, 6-3 at home is plenty good enough. Now you go on the road. Now you have to beat Detroit, who hopefully you win 2 of 3, basically pay them back. Go to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh right now is in a losing streak. They've lost 7 in a row. They're struggling. So you have 2 weaker teams that you should win 2 of 3 in both, at least minimum. And then you go play the Dodgers, and the Dodgers, are going to start getting better. The Mookie Betts coming back, I believe, today. So, they're not going to be struggling forever. But nonetheless, it's you take these series, take these road trips or home stands, and, I think it was always, okay, beat on the bad teams and play 500 against the good teams. If you can do that, you're going to get to the postseason more times than not. And so I think that's, you take care of your business and then you worry about Houston and what they've got. And I don't know strength of schedule. I haven't looked at that yet. I don't know if you have yet, but this is about the time I start looking at the strength of schedule for each of these, teams. And, I think Houston, obviously, go to Boston, sweeping them. And if you caught Boston 3 weeks ago, that was a different team. They were in the postseason mix. They were playing very well. But now they caught them when they're sliding, and I think they've lost like 12, 19 or something like that. So it's just kind of the timing of everything is so important at this time of the year too, of who you're playing.
I'm looking at it right now. Seattle, I think, has got the 22nd.
Okay, so it's a week schedule.
492 strength of schedule.
Yeah.
Left. Where is Houston? Why am I blanking? I'm not seeing Houston here. Oh, Houston is 15th, 502.
So it's a little tougher. Yeah. Again, you're always looking for little. You still have to play the games.
Sure.
You're looking for little slivers of things that you kind of keep an eye on and monitor. And they have at least one series left against each other. Correct?
At
the end of the year.
In Houston, it's the. I think. Let me double check. I think it's the second to last series of the year. Which, unfortunately, they're not going to play more times. With the how they redid the schedule and all that, and it's too bad that they're not going to face off more. But it's the second to last series. Yep, in Houston, Monday, September 23rd through the 25th.
Yeah. So I mean, it's that series. You always kind of look. All right, when's the head-to-head? Okay, it's at the end. It's at the end. It is going to come down to that. There's no question. I will say this: they have left Texas on the side of the road. I think they're the roadkill of the season now. Where Texas is, because they have fallen flat. Unfortunately, really since the trade deadline is over. And so that's kind of a nice thing. It's basically a 2-team race. You don't have to worry about a third.
Hey, this week in baseball, the play that happened this past week in the Padres in Marlins, right on the home run, that hit the glove or hit the fence,
right,
then off the glove of the left fielder and over. Everyone is saying the same. That should be a home run. Now, under the exact rules, it's not, because it hit it hit the fence in play, and
Correct.
then it hit the player, then out. But everyone agrees that it's a dumb rule. Do you think baseball will look at that in the offseason and maybe change that? Because what's the difference of that of then the ball that went off Jose Canseco's head and went over the field, went over the fence?
Right. So the rule is pretty clear. If it hits off of a fielder without any other object and then goes over the fence, like it hit off of Canseco's head and went over the fence, it's crazy how that happened. Or you see it where, a guy jumps up to try to catch the ball, goes off his glove and over the fence. That's a homer, no doubt. But this one, I knew the rule because I've seen it before. I couldn't remember. I don't remember exactly where, but I have seen it where the ball will hit the fence, come back, hit the fielder, and it'll go over the fence. And it is a ground rule double. And the distinction, I don't know how they kind of came to that, but I know that rule has been in the books now for a long time. Yeah. So, I don't think they'll make any move. I mean, you saw Mike Schilt. Mike Schilt knew the rule. Once they explained it to him, he's like, "Yeah, that's they're right on that. They called it correctly." I mean, it was an odd thing, but that's one of those where the Padres have been hot, and can you imagine if that actually was a home run? I think they would have won the game, in that particular situation. Tough way to lose, but they were losing the whole game. That was a tight game there. That San Diego Miami played there.
The last thing for when you look at the two leagues, I mean, obviously the Dodgers there in the National League, and I mean the Brewers are there and the Phillies. Yeah. But you could ask Mariner fans what you saw the Phillies, and the Mariners performed obviously quite well against them. How do you think there's a gap between the American League and the National League, and if so, like how big of a gap do you think that is? between the
I think
teams?
there's definitely a gap. I think there's a gap there for sure. I think that and we've seen this it seems every year, but the American League has been deeper. The divisions, the American League East, teams over 500, they just seem to be built better, differently than the National League teams. Their offenses are they're a little more well-rounded. I think that's a better way to kind of look at it. Now, Philly, I was really surprised they've gone into this little slide because they're of all of the teams, they are the best. I think, and most well-rounded, certainly in the National League, and I think they stack up with the good American League teams, with Boston, with New York. Yeah, when you kind of look at Cleveland's really good. The two in the American League West are going to end up being really good too, probably 90 plus wins. But the bar's always been higher in the American League, at least the last few years. Even in the wild card, and I think that with the Phillies struggling, Atlanta Braves really struggling, Dodgers been struggling lately. Like it's and then the three wild card teams. I mean, San Diego and Arizona are playing the best right now, and they've separated themselves. And then it's three teams. It's the mediocre Mets, mediocre Cardinals, the mediocre Giants. Those are the three teams that are in the mix for the third wild card right now. It's that's going to be, I think, a fascinating race too, because you've seen a couple of those teams, and I've seen them all, and I don't know which is the best. The Giants look like they're the best right now. They have the best starting pitching that looks like it's healthy if Robbie Ray, can stay healthy this year. So.
Okay, I was thinking one more, and then I'll let you go. Jarren Duran, do you think there will be a suspension at all by the team or by Major League Baseball, or nothing?
But that's a good question. I think that they might have a suspension there. Yeah, I don't think they mess around with intolerance and the things that he had said. I know he apologized. I know the Red Sox apologized too, but. It's a tough one. It's a tough one that, I'm trying to remember if there was another player that got into it with a fan. Nothing that comes to my mind. That's the only thing. So usually they go on precedent. If they have, fined, he'll definitely get a fine. If they suspend him, it'll have to be related to some other similar type of event. And I can't recall any other player in this particular situation.
Yeah. I wonder if they do something, especially within, the last week, the passing of Billy Beane.
The timing of it is,
you know what I mean?
Awful. I mean, it's never a good time, to say that, to have a confrontation, to show intolerance, but especially in light of, Billy Beane, who was, the VP of Diversity, Equity, Inequality, of the league. He passed away of leukemia, and he, of all the people, like he brought a joy to the sport, and he brought awareness and education to the players, and that's, I think, the other thing that was just shocking about it, unfortunately.
All right, the Jim. That's it for a Monday visit with the great Jim Duquette. His show brought to you by Flatstick Pub. Visit flatstickpub.com. Again, new episodes every Monday at 1:00 on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Please like, subscribe, follow, leave a comment, and of course, all the content can be found up at pucksports.com. Enjoy the week of baseball, Jim. We'll talk next Monday.
Enjoy it. Okay, talk next Monday. Thanks, Puck.
There he is, Jim Duquette. All brought to you by Flatstick Pub here at Puck Sports and pucksports.com. Thanks, Jim.